All right. Before we get into any major stuff with this play, I gotta give you my take on what's happening here. And I'll probably do this for each of the acts and scenes that we go over, just to make sure that you guys are really getting a good understanding of this play. Because I'll admit, Shakespeare can be tough until you get used to it. So I'll go into a little bit of my own explanation before I start asking you guys to do any kind of your own analysis or exercises or work with the play. So we read the prologue, right? And I told you it has a pretty negative connotation. I mean, what does it tell us? It tells us this is a story about two households that hate each other, and they've hated each other for a long time. So much so that people are fighting and dying because of this grudge that they have. Um, Unfortunately, we get two kids from the opposing households, and they fall in love, and guess what? They kill themselves. The good news is once they're dead, it kind of stops the fighting. It buries their parents' strife. So this whole story about their death-marked love and their parents' continuing rage, that's what this whole play is going to be about. This is the 2 hours traffic of the stage. And they say, hey, look, if you're listening with patient ears, whatever you didn't pick up in this prologue, we'll fix. I mean, the whole story's laid out for you. Spoiler alert much? But I digress. We get into scene one, which I know you guys read, and we have this great tool, wordplay, to use. I hope you guys really utilize that and watched the scenes or read the modern English translation, clicked on some of the clips. I mean, it's a great tool to aid in your understanding. But if you didn't and you just want to hear it straight from me, here's what happens, right? We open with these two guys who are minor characters, like legit, they never show up again. But we have these two guys come on stage and they start going back and forth. And this was what Shakespeare was famous for, was this word play, right? You don't even have to understand it to see what's happening here, right? Carry coals. Then we'd be colliers. And we'd be in collar. Draw your neck out of the collar. I mean, this play on words was fantastic for people of the time. All right, give them a break. There weren't any video games. So they start talking about how manly they are, basically. And they get into this whole conversation about how they'll fight and whether or not they will fight. And they're kind of poking fun at each other like guys do. And then they start talking about women. And let's not even get into what they're talking about here. I mean, come on. Guys, audiences haven't changed much in the last 500 years. We like the same stuff. Sex and violence sells. Shakespeare knew it. Hollywood knows it. Let's move on. So they're talking about all this nonsense when suddenly, okay, some of the people of the Montague household show up. So these were Capulets, and now we've got the Montagues, right? And they come on and they decide that they're going to bite their thumbs, all right? If you don't know what biting your thumb is and you didn't watch the video, let's just think of it as a single finger gesture that upsets people. We have one that we use today as well, one finger, and it makes people very annoyed when you show it to them. All right, same idea here. So he's walking around biting his thumb. And they go back and forth about, well, are you biting it at us? And da 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 da. And will we get in trouble if we say yes? Do you want to fight? I mean, I love this, right? It's the same thing you guys see. You want to fight? No, I don't want to fight. But if you do want to fight, I'll fight you, right? Like it's just silly boys being boys, if you will. So then they start to fight because Benvolio has shown up and they're outnumbered, right? So they start fighting, and Benvolio comes in, and the first thing he says is, part, fools. Put up your swords. You know not what you do. I mean, stop fighting. Benvolio's not here to fight, which is interesting because he's actually a very close relation, very close. He's a cousin to the Montague household. But he's not about this fighting life. But then Tybalt walks in. And Tybalt is a cousin to the Capulet household, complete opposite of Benvolio. Tybalt wants a fight. He's looking for a fight, right? He straight up tells Benvolio, look upon thy death, okay? And taunts him by telling him how much he hates him, calls him a coward. So then they start fighting. Well, who shows up? The citizens, the crowd of people, and they start fighting. Capulet, the leader of the house, and his wife show up. And Capulet wants to start fighting, and his wife is holding him back. Okay? Montague, Lord Montague and his wife show up. Montague's trying to fight. He's saying, "Hold me not," to his wife. She's trying to hold him back. There's a brawl on stage. This is how the most famous love story starts? Come on. Everybody's fighting. And then the prince comes in. And the prince tells them to stop, right? He says, "To peace." And nobody stops. No one stops fighting. He says, "Will they not hear?" Right? He's having to yell over these people. And he goes through this monologue. Right? We're going to talk a little bit more about monologues later, but he goes through this monologue of telling them that you better throw your mistempered weapons to the ground. 3 civil brawls. 3 times. They've had these gigantic brawls in the middle of the street. Okay? And he's had it. He says, "If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. Mess with my city again, and I'll kill you." Period. Like, he's not playing. And so then everybody leaves, right? Montague is wondering what happened. He asks Benvolio. Benvolio tells him. And then Lady Montague's wondering where Romeo is. We haven't seen him yet. Title character? Well, he wasn't there. So Benvolio says he saw Romeo. He was walking early this morning, but when he went to go towards him, right, he moved away. Okay, towards him I made, but he was ware of me and stole into the covert of the wood. And Montague tells us that Romeo has many morning been seen there with tears on his face, adding to the clouds with his deep sighs. And when the sun comes up, okay, he goes to his room, away from the light, steals home my heavy son, private in his chamber, shuts up his window, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Guys, Romeo's depressed. He's moping around, crying about stuff, and staying in his room. Gee, sounds like a teenager to me. Benvolio wants to know, does anyone know what's wrong? And the answer is no, nobody knows. So they say, "Hey, maybe you can find out." And Romeo's like, Benvolio's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And lo and behold, here's Romeo. Okay? So Benvolio comes up to Romeo and tries to talk to him. They have this great exchange, very rhythmic exchange. "Is the day so young, but news struck 9? I me sad hours seem long." Again, that iambic pentameter we talked a little bit about in the prologue lesson. We see it here and it's great. So they have this back and forth, and Benvolio basically wants to know what's wrong, and Romeo says he's not in love, he's out of love. The girl that he likes doesn't like him back. Okay? Out of her favor where I am in love. All right? And then we get this introduction to Romeo here. And what is he doing? Oh my goodness. He sees that there's been a fight, and he goes on about brawling love, loving hate, heavy lightness, serious vanity, feather of lead, bright smoke. I mean, he's listing off all these oxymorons, and it's like super poetic. And it's kind of over the top, right? And look how he ends it. He says, "Dost thou not laugh?" Benvolio is laughing at him, y'all. I mean, guys, imagine if your best friend shows up and starts rattling off all this poetic stuff about some girl that he's in love with. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and all girls like a little poetry, but it's never been considered super masculine. And Benvolio is laughing at him. Okay? So again, they're good friends, but Romeo doesn't want to be laughed at. Okay? It goes on again, talk about how sad he is, and love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs. Oh, what is love? What is love? I mean, whiny, 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 whiny. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, I hate on Romeo quite a bit in this play. He's not my favorite character, so sorry if I'm being biased. Anyways, Romeo says he's gonna go. Benvolio follows him. All right. Benvolio wants to know, like, who do you love? What's the problem? Okay. So Romeo teases him, says that I love a woman. And he goes on to talk about the girl that he's in love with, right? He says that this girl, she's not going to be hit with Cupid's arrow, okay? She will not stay the siege of loving terms. Okay. And Benvolio says, oh, so she's sworn that she will still live chaste? Anyone here know what chastity is? Chastity is when you won't sleep with people. Yeah, she hath, and in that makes huge waste, Romeo tells us. Romeo's in love with a girl that won't sleep with him, and he's terribly upset about it, you guys. Uh-huh. Anywho, Benvolio says, dude, what's the big deal? Forget to think of her. All right. He says, examine other beauties. That's the same advice you'd give your friend, right? They still don't like you? Find another girl. There's a bunch of fish in the sea. So Romeo goes on to say about how he'll never love another girl. Okay. Hers is exquisite. All right. He says, he that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. All right. Thou canst not teach me to forget. Nobody is going to make him forget how beautiful this girl is, how much he loves this girl. This is it, guys. His life is over. He is being so dramatic. And Benvolio says, look, dude, I'm gonna help you or die in debt. Right? Like that's the end of Act 1, Scene 1. So we get a fight, we get an introduction to whiny little Romeo in love with the girl, and we get Benvolio, the good guy, the good friend, trying to help him out. Pretty decent setup to a story, I'd say.